Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video. It is going to be update number 2 in the project Level Up project that was created by Sophie Alexandra here on YouTube. I will have her link down below, as well as any other information pertaining to this project. I did decide to start this project like halfway through the year because I was missing trying to pan eyeshadows, but I wanted to do something different than the project pan those eyeshadows, which I've done in years past. I am also working on a Pan That palette and No Pan Left Behind, which I will leave those series linked down below in case you're interested in catching other palette project content from me. But if you're unfamiliar with the project Level Up, it kind of combines quite a few palette projects into one, and you are randomly generating a palette to work on. And in level 1, you need to use every single shade in that palette at least one time and then hit one pan. Level 2, every single shade 2 times and hit 2 pans. I have some really good progress, so I decided to roll in 2 palettes at a time. So I rolled in the introduction level 1 and level 2. When I rolled out level 1, I rolled in my level 3 palette. So I have both those palettes. I have better progress on my level 3, but we will not be rolling any palettes out. Nevertheless, I do have a new pan to share with you, which I'm super excited about. So if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project panning content or just chit-chatting about makeup, I'd love for you to consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. All right, you guys, because I film No Pan Left Behind closer to the beginning of the month and I am doing Project Level Up in the middle of the month, any new pans that I hit the previous month, I will share in my Project Level Up videos. So check that series out if you're interested about what eyeshadow pans I've hit, although that doesn't necessarily make sense because it's not necessarily like, we're just gonna keep it that way. We're gonna keep it that way. But I do have one pan to share with you today from my level 3 palette, but let's get into what palettes I'm working on. So for my level 2 palette, I have been working on the Fantasy Cosmetica Druid palette. This is a really, really beautiful palette. This is what this one looks like. And this is definitely more of a fall suited palette in my opinion. Definitely something that gives me those grungy sort of fall vibes, and I'm very excited to pull this out and play with this more in September. Last update, so I will scoot over and I will post where this palette was last update, and then I will post a picture here of what this palette is looking like now. And I don't think you'll see much of a change at all because I actually only reached into this palette one time since the last update for a total of 4 times within this project. And we can quickly go shade for shade and see where we are at. So this first shade right here, I had reached for one time last update. I did not reach for this any additional times, so this is only at 1 total use. This middle shade right here has not gotten used at all. It is a really, really beautiful duochrome or multi-chrome shade. And again, I'm very excited to reach into this palette more in the fall time. I have been trying to get through like my summer palettes that I pulled out and make sure everything gets a use or 2. And then I also still have so many new palettes in my collection that I'm trying to get through as well. So sometimes certain things take priority, and if you're a palette that doesn't feel like it fits into the season for me, well, maybe you're gonna get a little neglected. But as mentioned, this is like very much, there's a fly that's bothering me. This is very much fall. September, October, November, I'm very excited for it. This shade right here has also not gotten used at all. This gold shade right here, I have used 2 times now, so I used it 1 time as of the last update. This is the shade that I reached in for the 1 time that I reached for this palette this past update. So this is now at 2 total uses. I anticipate this may be one of the shades that I try to hit a pan on. I really enjoy this gold shade. I think it's really beautiful, especially when doing like a brown smoky eye. I enjoy reaching into it. Although I'll be curious to see how deep the pans are. This could be a very challenging product or palette to hit pans on. The 2 like special shades in this palette did come broken when this was shipped to me, but I just pressed them right back in. That's why they look a little bit messier. But I don't necessarily want to like try and focus my brush in one area on those special shades just because they're a little bit more crumbly for that reason. So it'll be really interesting to see like the path we go to hit pans in this palette. This middle shade right here, this beautiful green shade, I have not used at all, but I do feel like this could make a really beautiful nail polish. So maybe, although I decided I don't really love a green nail polish unless it's like St. Patty's Day time. I typically tend to like more pinks, purples, and blues. So we'll see. That could still be a fun one to play around with. And I actually would be curious about how the multi-chrome or duochrome shades look as a nail polish as well, just because it can really go either way, I've found. So no uses yet for this shade. Same thing goes for this shade right here. I have not reached for this one at all within this project. This shade down here, which is actually, this is one of the special shades, and I've reached for this one time. I reached for this one time as of the last update. I have not reached into this shade at all, and I reached into this once as of the last update, but no additional uses this past update. So again, since the last time I updated you guys, I've only reached into this palette one time, and it was for this gold shade right here. Everything else I'm still needing to reach for at least one, if not two times, and then we're still on the hunt for 2 pans within this palette. So that's where we're at with the Fantasy Cosmetica Druid palette. My level 3 palette, I've decided that I want to always, one of my 2 palettes that I'm working on in this project, I want to be out of my like seasonal list. So I do have a top 10 fall palettes video coming, and so I will have a fall wheel that has those 10 palettes on it. So if I roll one of these 2 palettes out in the fall season, I'll roll from that wheel. But from the summer palette wheel, for level 3, we got the Kaleidos Escape Pod, and I will say, rolling this in, I was extremely nervous, but I think we have a path to success here. So this is what this palette is looking like. The only thing that's gonna hold that up is me getting use out of these colorful shades, hopefully in August, because I don't necessarily see me getting a ton of use out of like the pink, purple, and bright blue. Well, maybe the blue. But definitely more summer vibes in my opinion. But as you can see, oh, and again, I will post a picture of where this palette was when I rolled this in last month, and then I'll post a picture of where it is now. And you should be able to see that we do have a new pan in the cream matte shade, the shade Lo-Fi, which obviously was the easiest shade in the palette for me to hit a pan on, but I did get a ton of use out of this palette this past month. I actually reached for it a total of 15 times since I last updated you guys on this project, and we can go a shade for shade and I can tell you how many times I reached into each shade. So this shade right here, this is the shade Soiree. It's this really, really beautiful periwinkle, kind of like neon periwinkle purple. I have loved this on the lower lash line. I think it is such a pretty shade. It's not what I have on today. I actually have on the Moira Cosmetics Fun is in the Air palette today, but I feel like I get the same vibes from this palette. I did actually reach for this 3 total times, if I didn't mention, and I think I will still get a few more uses out of it. This is probably not the shade that I think I will hit pan on. The pans aren't like the deepest, but I still just don't think that this is going to be a focus shade for hitting pan. This next shade, Mardi Gras right here, I have not reached for at all. I did end up reaching for the shade Flamingo one time, this bright hot pink. I believe I used it when I did a look to go to the Barbie movie, and I really need to get used because I do not reach for a hot pink matte very frequently. So I need to at least bust through my other 2 uses, hopefully before September comes. The shade Tango, I also did not reach for at all. It's this really bright matte orange. I don't reach for an orange that often, so that's gonna be interesting. And then I have the shade Exoplanet, which is this beautiful blue right here. I also did not reach for this at all, although I do, now that I've done, so I did like a blue wing today, and it wasn't as hard as I thought. So I kind of want to play around with this now to do like a cobalt blue wing, because y'all know I love a cobalt blue. So still 0 uses on this. Moving down to the middle row, we have the shade Starlight Sonata, which does have a decent dip going on it in that upper corner. I have been focusing my brush up there, and usually when I go into this shade, I'm using it as an inner corner highlight on the eyes. So I'm using a really small brush. So I think maybe one more month and I could have a pan on this shade. I did reach for that a total of 10 times since since rolling this in. I had a little bit of use on this shade, but definitely making some progress there. I do feel like with some good effort, I could have a pan on this shade next. Then we have the shade Amaretto, which I did not reach for at all. It's this really beautiful like pinky shade, and I feel like I could get beautiful looks, you know, for summer out of the shade, but also I feel like this is the shade that can take me into the fall as well. So just with like a neutral look, or even like a more mauvey pink rosy tone look, I do feel like I could get some good use out of that. Next, we have the shade Space Oasis, which is one of my favorite shades in this palette. It's this really beautiful iridescent purple sort of shade, and I did reach for this 3 total times. This also makes a really, really, really beautiful inner corner. I don't think I will focus on this to hit a pan, but I do see myself reaching for this a few more times as an inner corner highlight. Then we have the shade Cosmic Cabaret, which I reached for 1 total time, but I did reach for this as a nail polish, and I loved it as a nail polish. I thought it was a really, really, really beautiful nail polish shade. That arm's getting tired, so I'm gonna switch over here. I could see myself reaching for this another 2 times just as a nail polish, because I feel like it gives those really beautiful like jewel tone vibes that I love in the fall time. There is the book Crossed by Emily McIntyre. This purple reminds me of the purple on the cover of that book, and I just like see myself sipping like a pumpkin spice latte on my deck with my patio lights on, with this as my nail polish, and me reading the book Crossed, because it's all about the aesthetic, right? But I really loved that as a nail polish, and I do plan to use it again at least once as a nail polish. Maybe I'll try this on the eyes as well. I don't see it not being a good eyeshadow shade. I just haven't been reaching for like a purple like this. I haven't had a need for a purple like that, so that's where we sit with that one. And then next up I have the shade Galactic Gala. I'll switch back over here. Galactic Gala, which is this really beautiful green. I used this as a nail polish, and that kind of like, it was pretty, but I was like, okay, I don't know that I'm like loving at least that shade of green. I think maybe like more of like a neon green next summer could be really beautiful. But I did reach for this 2 total times, once as a nail polish, once on the eyes. I do love me a good green eyeshadow, so I don't think I'll have any trouble using this, whether it be summer, fall, winter, whatever. Love me a green. Then we have the shade Saturnalia, which I actually didn't reach for at all, but I think I'm gonna have so much fun with this shade as we reach the beginning days of September, just because this gives me kind of like that grungier green feel that I feel like will be really beautiful for those like grungy green. Like I'm thinking of mixing this potentially with like a look from the Melt Gemini palette. I think could be really beautiful, so I don't think I'll have any issues reaching for that at least 3 times. Again, I don't think this will be a focus shade. Next, we have the shade Bossa Nova, which I also did not reach for at all. This is more of a cool tone shade, but I feel like this could also work really well as like a one shadow and done. I do have my Pan That palette, which I'm so sick of, I barely reached for. The shade Twig this is giving me kind of Twig vibes, although I feel like this is maybe more brown and less gray toned than Twig, so maybe I would even like this better. I still don't know that I'll make this a focus shade, because I feel like I'll have better luck with the brown down here, we'll get into it, and then Starlight Sonata in order to get my 3 pans, but I have not yet reached for this one at all. Then we have our first pan in this palette, which is the shade Lo-Fi. I'm so excited to see a pan in this palette, even if it is in the cream matte shade, and the reason being is this palette really did, like I remember being so excited about purchasing this palette. It was during, I think, summer 2021 when I was really having fun playing with color. And well, I don't want to say I don't have as much fun playing with color, but I just am not as like excited about color maybe as I was then. It makes me so happy to like open a colorful palette and see pans in that palette too. Because sometimes I feel like my colorful palettes, I'll reach for 1 or 2 times a year, and I'm like, should I have really spent the money on that? But I love the Kaleidos formula, and it just makes me so happy that I have a pan in here. I ended up reaching for the shade a total of 11 times to hit pan. So that means, you know, I feel like with, granted, I'm using different brushes, but I do feel like under 10 uses more to go on Starlight Sonata, and I could have a pan, and it won't be hard for me to use this as an inner corner highlight just with every look. So 11 total uses to hit pan. I am currently trying to finish off a single shadow, like a single cream shadow that I have just sitting in my singles collection. And if I were to finish that single shadow before completing this in the project level up, or before leveling up, I would come back to this and continue to use this as a lid setting shade and just expand that pan further. Next up, if you can hear, my ear just popped on, but we're gonna not turn it off and just keep it going. So if you hear like a, I'm sorry. Next up I have the shade Carnival, which is this really, really beautiful peach shade. I have not yet reached for this shade at all, and I'm kind of kicking myself because I feel like this could be such, or would have been such a beautiful shade for the summertime. So I'm actually really excited to play around with this and plan to do so in the next few days. I don't think it'll be hard to get 3 uses out of that, because I also feel like this is a shade that could carry me into the fall quite easily. And then we get to the last shade, which is this shade Terrace, which is this really beautiful chocolatey brown shade. I've used this 2 total times, and this I believe will be my 3rd focus shade. I feel like that one will likely be the one I have the most luck hitting a pan on, just because I can use my liner brush, which is obviously very concentrated. I can use it every single day as a brown liner, and I feel like that'll be my best bet of hitting a pan in 3 shades. So that is where we are at with the Kaleidos Escape Pod and the 2 palettes that I'm currently working on in the project Level Up. I've been having so much fun. I was hesitating on whether or not to do this project because I was like, I feel like I'm just gonna feel so overwhelmed. And while I feel probably most overwhelmed by my new palettes and trying to get through those, maybe it's a sign that I should stop buying so many new palettes. I have had so much fun. I've literally had so much fun reaching for the Escape Pod, and I felt so motivated to hit my pans on this. So I'm very excited about this project and to just continue on. I won't reset this project when we get to the end of the year / January. I think I'll just continue on with wherever I'm at in my levels, and I'm having so much fun with this one. So that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch, for supporting me, and for supporting my channel. I appreciate it so much, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.